Thank you for watching The Abundant Life today. Welcome to part 2 of the Coping with Stress series. Part 1 defines what stress is, identify types of stressors, and symptoms. I gave you the challenge to identify your stress symptoms. I hope you were able to do that activity. In this video, I will be talking about a life-changing coping strategy to manage stress. Because, as we identified in part 1, stress will always be a part of our lives. So the key is to learn to manage your stress. We have to strategize to survive our stresses so that we can thrive. You do not want to miss this. To support this channel, please subscribe, like, comment, and don't forget to share. Do not move. I will be right back. Dealing with stressors daily can cause you to experience stress symptoms that are normal. However, stress can become chronic if not managed. The first step is to know your symptoms. Know how your body reacts when you're faced with stresses and demands in your life. What I have realized is, because we are so busy juggling a lot, we might not realize that we are stressed or identify our stresses immediately. However, we will readily recognize the symptoms in our bodies. That is why it is very important to know your symptoms. Don't wait until you're in a hospital bed to pay attention. You might have a hard time recognizing your stress symptoms because you've been ignoring them for so long. They have become normal to you. If you are struggling with identifying your symptoms, talk to a trained therapist and let them help you figure it out. The second step is to identify your stressors and try to resolve them. You do this by asking yourself questions about what may be causing your symptoms. When did they start? What triggered them? I want you to investigate to find out what are the specific stressors that are causing your stress reaction. It is important to know this because stress increases your cortisol level. Cortisol is a stress hormone that you need because it keeps your blood pressure level stable, your sugar level stable, among other beautiful things. However, increased levels of cortisol causes a lot of damage to your body, including increased blood pressure and sugar numbers. It also reduces the serotonin production, which makes you happy. I could go on for hours about the negative impact of increased cortisol levels in your body. Once you identify your stressors, the next step is to place them into 2 categories. What you can control, category 1, and what you cannot control, category 2. To resolve your stressors, you must first identify whether or not you possess the power to change your circumstances. Let's look at the first category, things you can control. These are the stresses in your life that you have the power to change by creating a plan and executing and implementing your plan. Having a plan is important because it takes away the worry of not knowing what you're going to do. It reduces your anxiety. These are issues in your life that you can spend time thinking about them, talking about them, to strategize. Let's look at an example. You're feeling stressed because you're not completing your work on time, which causes you to have to work overtime. You have the power to assess your workload, assess the time you have, and determine if your allotted time to each task is reasonable. and come up with a plan to manage your workload so that you can feel less overwhelmed. Identifying the stresses you can control and creating a plan to resolve them helps you feel less powerless and more hopeful about reducing your stressor and experiencing relief. Let's look at the second category, things you cannot control. These are things in your life that you do not have the power to change. It doesn't matter how much time you think about the situation or talk about the situation, you do not have the power to change the situation. Therefore, spending time to process this stressor only results in you feeling frustrated, anxious, and helpless because you do not have the power to resolve it. There is no end to your worry. Things you cannot control, you must release them and let them go. I know it's not easy. However, we only hurt ourselves when we hold on to things we cannot change. Piggybacking on our previous scenario, after you assess your workload and time allotment, you realize that your workload is too heavy. You cannot complete the task within the time you have for work. So you approach your manager to explain the situation and request a reduction in the workload or a time extension on your task. Your manager expresses that there is no possibility your workload will be reduced or time extended, and goes further to tell you that if you cannot manage a job, you should let him or her know. This is a stressor because if you do not produce, they might fire you. And if you continue to work overtime, your stress levels will not be reduced. Focusing on how unreasonable your manager is, the fact that he or she does not care, or whether or not he or she is human, will not change the terms of the job. It will only frustrate you and increase your symptoms. So after you vent your frustration, yes, you need time to vent because you're human. You can vent to yourself or to someone else. After you're done venting, you must accept that you cannot change your manager's mind and release that. In this category, accepting your inability to control the situation helps you to release it and instead focus on things you can control, such as deciding if this environment will work for you. How long can you endure this environment? And if not, what are your options? If you notice the stressor has not changed, however, you now have enough information to make decisions within your control and explore your options. You are therefore not powerless. You have control of your next steps. So let's review. The first step, know your symptoms. Second step, identify your stressors. Then, place your stressors in 2 categories. What are those categories? What you can control and what you cannot control. Create a plan for the things you can control and accept and release the things you cannot control. I have a second challenge for you. Here is your second challenge. I want you to identify the stresses in your life and place them in those 2 categories. Things you can control and things you cannot control. Create a plan for the things you can control and make a decision to accept and release the things you cannot control. I know this sounds like a lot of work, but guess what? You have to strategize to survive your stresses so that you can strive. You are worth the time, you are worth the effort, and your happiness must be pursued, and it takes utilizing your coping strategies. So stay tuned for my next video in this series, when I will address another life-changing coping strategy to manage your stress, to gain control over your life, and help you to experience the happiness that you deserve. I hope you found this video helpful. Support this channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, and don't forget to share. See you soon.